Hey everybody, Norm here again, talking about LabVIEW 2025 Q3. And this time we're going to talk about a little feature that has zero UI associated with it. In this case, the LabVIEW Command Line Interface, and one of the changes that we did to this feature in the latest version. So for those of you who didn't know, LabVIEW can be invoked via the command line. Similar to like if you want to just run a VI with standard in and standard out, similar to like just calling a Python function or anything else like that. And one of the things that we know that is really important to folks who are doing continuous integration and continuous deployment or development is the idea of running a diff report, or when something gets checked into source code control, hey, there should automatically be a differencing report, some kind of physical or I guess digital collateral associated with what changed in all of those individual pieces of code. Now, the LabVIEW CLI, as it's referred to as, can do a lot of different things, but what we did is we extended its capability to include the ability to go ahead and run one of these reports. So let's look at what it is when you run it, or actually what it used to be when it was just interactive, and we'll see what that looks like. So I have two individual pieces of code here, and you'll have to forgive me for keeping it dumb and simple. And you can see that I have my 5 types of VI here and 6 types. It's an example that I just used a moment ago for source distributions. But it's basically a simple example where you're pushing data into a database. And in one case, I have, as you can kind of see it right here, I've got a variable number of individual elements in this array. So nothing too drastic in particular, but if I wanted to difference these two VIs, the way that I could have done it is using a function from the command line, just lv_diff, or you can do it interactively in LabVIEW as well, where you have the ability to go through and compare two different VIs. And so for me, somebody that uses source code control, actually there's the 6 types. Let me see if I can go ahead and select my 5 types. There's my 5 types. And I could go through and compare. Now this is indeed an interactive compare session, and you can see that, hey, there's the various, it's highlighting that specific difference. It kind of shows it on the front panel. And what you could do, and this is in previous versions, 25Q1, we added the ability to go ahead and create a report from here, and then you can choose the various different types of reports from this dialog. It was an interactive process. Now, LabVIEW diff has been around for a long time, but creating the report and creating the HTML report is something relatively new, if I'm not mistaken, along with a couple other diff features. But now we have the ability to run this same, basically that workflow of do the difference, and then create the report, and then output the report to a specific file type, all from a very specific, once again, just a automatic or automated process through some kind of CI/CD workflow. And look at how to invoke this from the command line. So by request of R&D, I've been asked to not dive into the very specific developer notes and just kind of show what we're already giving you in our help documentation. Maybe I was a little bit too eager to show off I have access to R&D information, when really a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you is already in the LabVIEW help. And so just a quick note, so if you kind of follow the cookie crumb trail that we've got here, it's underneath the LabVIEW user manual, the LabVIEW how-to, and then comparing VIs using the command line interface. And so that is one of the ways that you would get to this specific piece of information. Another thing about using the LabVIEW help online is you can hide those table of contents to make things a little bit more visible. And the thing that I think is probably the most important is really this chunk of code right here in the bottom is the specific command or a specific referenced example here for that. And so we're going to go ahead and copy this example that we've got right here. And you're going to see there's a variety of different required and optional features that you can see. In particular, it's basically which specific VI and then the path to the report. If you don't create a default one, it'll make a single file HTML, or if you don't declare the specific type, this is a neat feature that I thought wasn't in the help, but it is that if you don't actually say their specific report type, it will look at the extension of the file that you've given it and then infer the type from there. So once again, some of these heuristics or implicit behaviors that are documented, they're in our help. It just, gets the opportunity. You got to kind of read through the help file to learn about them, or watch these videos, share them with your friends, like, subscribe. But let's go ahead and see what this looks like in a VI. Now, for me, I don't like to type. I'm a LabVIEW programmer. I like to just do things graphically. So I'm actually going to do a couple different things here to call the command line from LabVIEW, but you can see how it goes. A neat feature that we put in LabVIEW was the quick drop keyboard shortcuts, or kind of specific ones. And if you do CMD from here, it takes you to the system exec VI. Now that's not really a feature, that's just something, a LabVIEW or a shortcut that somebody put in there. But what I'm gonna do is, once again, do a couple different things to get those VIs into the command line prompt. I'm gonna go ahead and paste this as text. Now this is another new feature that we've got in Q1, where I can start to look like I'm editing text, and if I press Control Space, it brings up a new dialog that I can bring over here that allows me to quick change free-floating text label into some other data type. So I'm going to go ahead and change that into a string as what we've got here. And a couple other things that I'm going to do that are a little less known features, I'm going to go ahead and minimize some of these other parts, is if I put a, let's say, path constant on the diagram, if you didn't know, you can drag and drop a VI from Windows Explorer, or, let's only select one of them there, or from a project into a file path constant. And so you can see that into that path constant, I can even copy it and paste it in there, and you'll see that it will take the path of wherever that file is that it has been on disk. It's a great feature to take advantage of in a couple other creative ways. Now that education time is done, I'm going to go ahead and change my first VI to %s, my second VI path to say %s, and let's do format FSTR, format into string. And for those of you who didn't know, this is a great feature. So now I can do those two different types, the format string into there, and then I will take the output and then go into the command line. So I will go through and run this, and we'll watch it execute. All right, so you can see here that I've got it created. Unfortunately, it's created underneath my Windows System 32 because I didn't give it a path and just loaded it wherever it was. But let's go ahead and look at that report and see what we get on the other side. And you can see here that we now have the output of a very specific comparison report, named as we want, highlighting the things of interest, taking advantage of some of the other neat new features where we can kind of collapse different sections of a report. And this is a single file HTML document here. So there's obviously not too much in this report, but keep in mind the big difference right here is that it was created automatically and programmatically, and with the needed features that we wanted. Now, I didn't enable and disable some of these things, but let's go ahead and get into some of where these things are. All right, so getting back to kind of that help document, and let's see what the things are that we need here. In particular, there's the different report types that we mentioned just a moment ago, and the very specific path of your report output. You can, once again, overwrite the existing reports or create a brand new directory, it was noted. And of course, there's the kind of the common things that you would have when creating the report, stuff that you might want to exclude. And this last one is one that I was actually called out specifically to highlight, is that you can compare the VIs without including the dependencies. So that should also accelerate the time of doing a diff and creating the report, so that it doesn't feel like it has to go do what LabVIEW normally does and validates that everything exists in memory before opening it up. So ideally, this turns into a big accelerator for kind of running this regular report. Now, with the LabVIEW CTI specifically, some of the, or not the CTI, the LabVIEW CLI, the command line interface, the way that it works typically is you would normally have to identify some certain ports, TCP/IP ports, in order to execute and to work with it. And one of the things that we've updated with the CLI is that's no longer necessary. The LabVIEW command line interface will go ahead and either, if it's the default ports, it will utilize what's there. It has a certain timeout associated with it, but if you give it, if it goes past the timeout, it will open a brand new instance of LabVIEW at a very specific, or at a TCP/IP port that you don't have to define ahead of time. And that ends up being something that was requested by the community because, once again, the annoyance of, hey, I don't know what port I need or what's going to conflict. And so we use the built-in NI service locator to go ahead and find the right and create a TCP port to use the command line interface to talk with LabVIEW and to do the operations that are needed. So just a couple other things that were added in alongside of this. And that wraps us up for talking about the new feature with the command line interface, being able to create and generate diff reports. If you expected this to be underneath the LabVIEW diff.exe, we understand that that was part of the desire, but we also realized that there was no ability to have extra inputs or outputs when it comes down to error management or standard in and standard out with the LabVIEW diff.exe function that normally people would expect to use. Like I use it for my source code control provider. That was something that was a decision that I read that the designers had to do. Hey, do we add this to the LabVIEW CLI or to add this to the LabVIEW diff report? And so we had more abilities and more features with LabVIEW CLI as opposed to just continuing to try to grow LabVIEW diff.exe. And so just once again, a little bit of extra insights. Do you like the feature? Do you hate the feature? Have you never even thought of doing a diff report programmatically? Let us know. We're going to give the feedback. Everything that I see in these videos, I'm going to make sure that the devs get that feedback and that input so we can continue to make LabVIEW more appropriate and performant for the things that you need it to do. We'll see you in the next videos. Thanks.